Commissioner Brennan, who's our president, isn't here today, so I'll be running the meeting. Nancy Ryring, Commissioner Ryring won't be here today either. She's hurt her back. So we'll start with roll call.
Commissioner Ryring, Commissioner Brennan, Commissioner Chancarelli,
Present.
Commissioner Lorenas,
Here.
Commissioner Mateo.
Here.
Just in case someone's here who has not attended these meetings, I'll just let you know that we have a public comment period, so you just sign a little card and hand it in, and we'll let you speak on items that are not on the agenda. And the point about that is that because of the Brown Act, we're not allowed to comment or answer questions, but we'll take notes, and if it's something that we feel we need to put on another agenda, we'll do that. So, new hires?
Yes, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the board for all their support in staffing both Pillar Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina professionally. We've successfully gone through a hiring process, and we're able to, through a rigorous program, we're able to choose 3 candidates, and they've accepted the position. And Carrie Smith, who led that charge, is here, our training officer for the San Mateo County Harbor District, to introduce our new hires to the district board and the public. Carrie?
Thank you, John. Do I need the microphone? Okay. Thank you, Honorable Commissioners and General Manager Moran and Julie Turner and Hoff, our Administrative Director. For the process, we were able to team up and really work through that process of hiring, reaching out further than we have before. And that hiring process was just amazing with the candidates that we ended up getting. It was very hard decision-making that came down at the end just to pick 3. Our list went almost down to 9 out of that list, which is really huge for us. It's advertised as an entry-level position, but truly that's not the case as it was 20 years ago. And experience matters as we fill 3 spots that aren't 3 new spots. It's filling 3 spots to get us up to speed at the 2 facilities, and that's really important to our operations. I'd like to first introduce Matthew Sumner. Matthew Sumner is an amazing find for us at the Harbor District. He comes from a National Park lifeguarding background at Ocean Beach, which is one of the most difficult beaches in the world to lifeguard. He enhanced his skills by becoming a paramedic, and he also works for a paramedic service out of the city. So we got 2 great skills from Matt, as well as a number of other personal skills. And would you like to come up? Would I introduce him? Or would I like to
That's okay. You know, if you want to say something, go ahead, but not necessarily.
I'm just happy that I was selected, and I'm really pleased to be on the team.
Very glad to have you, Matt.
Our second one up tonight is Julio Abdallah. He grew up in the area south of the harbor in San Mateo County, down San Gregorio way. He's got a tremendous background, including his military background with the Marine Corps, where he's one of the only quad qualified aircraft folks that was at Camp Pendleton down in Southern California. And Julio is also bilingual and came from the private sector with his customer service skills and working at a very high-end steak restaurant in the city as a manager. And we're happy to have Julio on board.
Welcome.
Welcome.
How are you doing? Yes, I want to say thanks for having me and choosing me, and I look forward to meeting all of you on a personal note and working with each other. Thanks.
Right.
Our third one up tonight is Brian Duffy, and Brian Duffy comes from an extensive Coast Guard background. He was a surfman, a coxswain, and 4 of the heaviest water Coast Guard stations in the country. He's also been a training officer, and his water skills are amazing. He's going to teach us a few things, I think, over the course of time, and we're just really happy to have Brian.
Hello, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity and looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on board.
Great.
Thanks.
Welcome.
That's what we have tonight for you, and if you have any questions.
Outstanding job, Carrie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Carrie, thanks for all the work you put into your job and making sure that we've got, the next generation, they're ready to work with the Harbor District and to work for the public, and welcome to all of y'all. You're gonna do a spectacular job, and I'm glad that Carrie's mentoring y'all as well.
Thank you, Regina.
Do we have any public comments? No public comments? Okay then. How about commissioner comments?
I have none. Is that
Ron?
okay?
No.
Okay, I have a few. I met with state legislative analyst Rachel Ellers she came to Supervisor Pine's office to talk about sea level rise resiliency, and wanted to know what we at the Harbor District and also just on the coast side, because we're sort of like a sore thumb out in the county. They don't see us sometimes, and so through the office of Supervisor Horsley and also Dave Pine, I got invited to go there. That was one of the reasons that we set up the Sea Level Rise Resiliency Committee, is to get invited to these meetings. And so we talked about what the state can do, both from a funding and also from a legislative point of view, to help the district and the coast side. And I'll be updating you more as time progresses. Also went to the City of Half Moon Bay planning meeting. The Planning Commission approved our Surfers Beach renovation project, so we're very happy about that. And we'll be updating folks as we move along. I think that's been one of our fun projects because we've been wanting to do it forever, and we've got a huge amount of community support as well as support from the Coastal Commission and Coastal Conservancy. I think that's it for me. Okay, committee updates. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good
y'all.
night. It's a great
Welcome.
night.
So our climate change resiliency meeting met July 11. We had an update on the Surfers Beach Sand Replenishment Project, which is going very well. We'll keep you guys updated as time progresses with that. Don't really have anything to report. Let's see. We also discussed potential habitat restoration projects for the Harbor District with respect to climate change, and we'll hear about that later this evening. Let's see. Have some notes here. We met for our governance and policy meeting, and I have some notes about that. You'll also hear a little bit about it. The committee had some recommendations. The committee members are myself, Commissioner Brennan. We had a public member who's here now, Bud Ratz, in the audience. And we also had Karen Tynan, who's our legal counsel for what's her title? It's legal counsel for I guess employment, and yeah, I think that's her title is for employment. So we were discussing policy changes with respect to harassment, and we've got governance and policy also, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so let's move on. Oh, excuse me. So one of the things that we wanted to present is this. It's a draft for us. We'd like to put this up in our office and up on the wall as a laminated fixture. And it's just basically our 8 core principles and codes of ethics.
Is this tied to the agenda item? This is the first time I've seen this. And I'm not opposed to it, I just.
It's from our suggested suggested from our policy meeting, yeah. And I don't know, are we putting this on the agenda? Let me have a look. Yeah,
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
so it's our agenda item 12.
But this is the first time I've actually seen this.
Okay, well, we'll discuss it at our, when we
Great.
get to it on item 12. I think that's it for committee meetings. I don't really have an update on wildlife protection at the moment. We didn't have any action items. I'm going to pull item 7 from consent. Does anyone else want to pull anything?
I would like to pull items 1, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
1, 6, oh, well, I was going to pull 7, so that's the 2.
Yeah, we both pulled our polls.
Okay. 1, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Yes.
All right. So we'll hear these at the, after we do the discussion items and put it at the end. And I'm going to pull from discussion, item 11, the Big Wave Risk Assessment Group.
So are you taking it off the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. And why is that?
Well, I think we need all the commissioners here to hear
Really,
this.
we have a quorum. I think we can move forward with it. Why not? We have a quorum. Legally, the public is entitled to hear what is being said about spending $45,000. I have a question about it. So I'd be willing to have a discussion, and if you'd like to make a motion to pull it, then I don't think that you can unilaterally pull something off an agenda when we have a quorum.
I understand what you're saying, and as acting board president, it's my prerogative to pull things off the
This has
discussion.
already been a publicly noticed agenda item. Just because you don't have the people that you vote with here doesn't mean you get to pull it off.
Well, Virginia,
I'd like to make a motion not to pull off item 11 on the agenda. Is there a second?
you can't do that.
I can. I'm
We
an
have
equal
legal
member
counsel.
of the board. I'm an equal
Can you
member of the
advise
board.
us, please?
Can you make a second?
Yeah.
We have a quorum. I'm sorry, we have a quorum, and
It
this
is
is
the-
publicly noticed. I've made a motion to leave agenda item number 11 on the agenda.
So noted. We're gonna move on to the next item.
No, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. So now that there's a motion and a second, we have to vote on this item. To leave the motion,
Can,
to leave the
our-
item on the agenda.
Okay, we've heard you. Now we'd like to hear from council.
I don't really care what council says. This is a Brown Act situation. There's a motion and a second. The public's entitled to listen to an agenda item when there is a quorum
Virginia,
of the
you
commission.
actually,
So there is a motion and a second. I'd like a vote. In fact, I'm calling for the vote. So roll call, please, Debbie,
To leave the item on.
on the agenda for discussion tonight. There's a second by, a motion by me, a second by Tom, and I've called for the vote, and that's the end of discussion.
yes, and we have heard you.
Great,
It's
so
the
there's a roll
president's
call, please.
prerogative. Let's take a 10-minute, or
Go
let's take
ahead.
a 5-minute break so I can discuss with council. How's that?
The council needs to can have this meeting with the entire board, not just the presiding officer of the board.
Thank you, Virginia. We'll take
You're
a 5-minute break.
you're very welcome, Ed.
We just
We're
discussed.
just taking a break and then we'll come back and
We just
discuss it.
discussed that it was the vice president's opinion that we were just not prepared to discuss this item tonight.
This item's on the agenda. There's a motion and a second to discuss it, and I've just made a roll call. I understand you've heard me, and
I think we're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Great.
Okay?
I think the public's entitled to hear what legal counsel has to say.
Start the meeting.
We're just gonna go right down the discussion item list,
Uh-huh.
and the first one is number 10.
Well, do we want to approve the consent calendar of the items that have not been pulled?
Yeah.
Great. I'll make a motion to approve the consent items, excluding items, or the consent calendar excluding items 1, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Therefore, I'd like to make a motion to approve 2, 3, 4, and 5, is that right?
I'll second. Okay.
Roll call,
Roll call.
Commissioner Chancarelli,
Aye?
Commissioner Lorenz,
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush.
Aye.
Okay. So we have habitat restoration discussion from Bill. So we wanted, excuse me, we wanted to do a PowerPoint, but we don't have.
In order to,
Right,
you know, I'd kind of,
right, so we don't have the,
touch base. In order to give an actual presentation by PowerPoint or something, it's gotta be submitted in advance to us so that we can put it in the packet. And unfortunately, Bill just didn't get it to us on time, so, but he can speak off of his notes, and that's,
okay,
you know,
can you do
informative.
that?
Informative presentation off your
Notes.
notes or off of, your, you know, handheld presentation. But we just can't, put something on the, projector, or, you know, submit a presentation without it having been submitted to us to, having the board packet.
Okay.
I have a question, Commissioners. Would it be worth returning at a different point in time when the projector is prepared?
Yeah, we could do that.
Would
It's up to,
Yeah, I think we could do that, but maybe you could just give us a,
A high
Couple.
level.
yeah, a
if
high
you give me a
level,
synopsis, sure.
because it's on the
Because I was
agenda.
excited about hearing about
Right,
it, so.
Shall I step over here?
yeah,
Good evening, honorable commissioners and audience. Thank you very much for hearing me out. My name is Bill Henry. I direct a nonprofit called Groundswell Coastal Ecology. We build living shorelines along our coast, and one of our focuses is to engage community and students in that process. And I had reached out to Ed about the potential of taking the model that we've been building in Santa Cruz County and bringing it up to here at Bella Point Harbor. Trying to remember my notes here, but he had walked by the Santa Cruz Harbor, which is adjacent and abuts our largest restoration project, which is about a half mile of open coastline in Santa Cruz. And it is, part of it is what we call greening the gray component of the Santa Cruz Harbor, or the west jetty of the Santa Cruz Harbor. And this project has about 12 different partners. There are about 6 local, state, and federal agencies involved in it, and we have about 6 schools involved with it. In Santa Cruz County, we have about 10 projects now, and we work with about 10 schools as well. Our model is basically we find low-hanging fruit opportunities for coastal restoration and building living shorelines, and then go out and fund those, and then engage, well, first engage the landowner, come up with a plan, and then go out and get funding to implement these projects. We generally pick areas that are high use and highly degraded. And many elements of the harbor fit that bill, where they will get significant public interaction and have a high opportunity for enhancing coastal resources. So it's kind of like a win-win situation. We try and work in the armpits. And I'm not saying that the harbor is an armpit, it's just a great opportunity, because the ecology of the harbor in many locations is fairly compromised.
Yeah.
We then take open coast models from intact coastline and then bring them to that urban footprint or that high use area. In doing so, we usually start small with a demonstration project and then reach our partners, which usually are adjacent schools and community groups, and build those community groups, start scaling them such that we identify community leaders that then become like the point person for the community group that happens to do a lot of the heavy lifting. The school groups we generally approach with the County Office of Education, and we're part of a teacher learning institute down there that pairs environmental educators, which we are, with the schools and teachers to fit the curriculum to the next generation science standards, which California is rolling out right now across the state. So that the educational material that we're providing in these living classrooms, the coastline, is integrated into the next generation of science standards. We also have staff that do the hands-on restoration and then work with contractors as well. Our funding comes from multiple sources, including NOAA, Fish and Wildlife Service, California State, etc. We'd like to start working towards implementing this in a couple places in the harbor. There's some good potentials. If you look at kind of like the low-hanging fruits in the harbor, the West Trail and the dunes along the West Trail would make a relatively straightforward living shoreline project where we could increase the biodiversity, which then supports the native flora and fauna and engage the community in doing that. Other locations include behind the Surfers Beach Sand Replenishment Project, so on that bluff south. And then in the East Harbor, above the groin that is to the north of Surfers Beach, and then going along there. There's also potential for the frontage road along Highway 1 for a restoration project as well. In doing so, the goal really is to make students in the next generation, as well as communities, in being the stewards and the catalyst for change and making our coast more resilient and more biodiverse. I think that there's an opportunity to do that here at Half Moon Bay. If we're to look out on a larger scale, I think that there's 250,000 people in San Mateo County that use this coastline, and there are a fair few students in there that lives could be changed, and they can be empowered with making change along the coast. And there would be opportunities to integrate that program into students that are over the hill as well. One thing that could help something like that would, eventually working towards some kind of a center that would be able to host those things. And there could be a spot for something in the harbor. We have like the Sanctuary Exploration Center, which is down in Santa Cruz. I feel like it's been pretty successful, although it missed some opportunities there where we could have integrated things like, say, a nursery that would support the build out of living shorelines along our coast, so that people can be engaged in that hands-on process, which we know is a really critical point of contact and learning and project-based learning. So anyhow, I'd love to come back at some point and kind of show you a demonstration of the models that we've employed there and overview some potential opportunities to apply that here with you and the local community. So thank you for hearing me. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
I look forward to hearing more.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you.
The PowerPoint working next
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I could send you a summary too, if you'd like.
We'll invite you back to our next Harbor District meeting. We'll notice it appropriately so you can just do a PowerPoint.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So you guys don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting if you don't want. You can go on for a while, I think.
Prepared to do number 11?
Yes, I'd just like to speak briefly about item 11. John and I took a break to talk administratively of how we should handle this. Nothing substantive was discussed. I think that given Commissioner Lorenas's desire to pull the item for the agenda, but Commissioner Chamberlain's desire to keep it on the agenda, there should be either a motion to continue the item to a future date.
There is a motion right now to keep it on the agenda.
Well, it
so
is already on the
Okay.
agenda, so that's the default mode. However, if there is a motion to continue the item to a later date, I think that should be made. Or a motion to discuss the item but to take action at a later date, something along those lines. agendize, and, so I am comfortable with either, despite it being the default position on the agenda, to entertain the motion to keep it on the agenda.
You just said it was going to be on the, or you mean entertain the motion to continue it?
Yes, to either have someone make the motion to continue the item for discussion to a later meeting, I think would be the best way to continue the conversation at a later meeting, considering that it might not be ready for discussion today.
Well, you've given us two options. The first one is to continue, the second one is to discuss but have the vote taken at a later day.
Yes.
We have a quorum right now, we could take the vote tonight if we wish, right?
Yes, that's true.
So that is the
So-
third option. So
And
I
the
would prefer that if you would be less biased towards whatever is going on, to please give us all of the options, because there are three, not just two.
I am talking about the alternative options because I understand, and I just want to say for the record, I am not biased. I am trying to present what options might be available for the commissioners who are
Then there are
interested.
three.
The commissioners who are interested in hearing this on another date. The standard operating procedure here would be to discuss it as it has been agendized. So I apologize if I didn't make it clear that that is still available. However, if there is a desire for the Vice President to continue the item, then a motion should be made to support that action.
So what you're saying is there's three options. Not change it from the agenda.
Correct?
The other is to make a motion to have a discussion but not vote.
Correct. So have the discussion and allow the public,
Mhm.
to have the discussion, and then a motion can be made at the conclusion of that to
Delay
continue-
the vote.
to continue the item because of whatever reason the commissioners deems appropriate, or the first option would be to continue the item without discussion because it's not ripe for discussion. So that's the first one. The second one would be to have a discussion and then to make a motion to continue any action on the item. And then the third option would be to hear the item and then to take action on it today.
Which is the original situation.
Correct.
So you would like to discuss it, Virginia, so I'll make a motion that we have a discussion on item 11, and we defer voting until the rest of the commissioners are here, because this is a very important issue, and I believe that all the commissioners should weigh in.
So you made that motion?
Yes.
So
There's no second, so the motion fails.
correct.
So now what happens?
So now we discuss the item as it has been agendized.
Okay. So we'll move on to item 11.
Can I just clarify, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
because I wasn't tracking there. So there was no second, and did I hear you say you could discuss as agendized, or that item is done?
No, it's
To
to,
discuss as agendized.
But then, so you wanted to move on to another item?
no,
No.
we're gonna be
No,
discussing
I
11.
think I'm running the meeting.
Well,
Virginia, if you
then
don't
run
mind.
it, please.
So we'll be discussing it as it appears on the agenda. Right?
Very well, this is my item. So this was a motion to authorize the interim general manager to enter into a professional service agreement with Big Wave Risk Assessment Group for an amount not to exceed $44,700 to sponsor a professional water safety and emergency first aid training summit. The San Mateo County Harbor District is the home to one of the largest big wave surf competitions in the world, Mavericks. The district issues a permit for the annual Mavericks Big Wave Surf event. However, even when the actual event does not take place, surfers come from around the world to enjoy the local surf conditions almost year-round. Surfing is inherently a sometimes dangerous sport, and the district recognizes the need for the public to be well educated in water safety and emergency first aid. The Big Wave Risk Assessment Group, Bragg, exists to educate and train surfers, first responders, emergency service personnel, and advanced ocean goers in ocean risk management, safety protocols, equipment, technology, and skills training to maximize their own safe practices and to evaluate the safety of those with whom they share their surf lineup. Their educational program is open to participants ranging from competent recreational riders to emergency service personnel to professional big wave riders, meeting each participant at their respective skill level, tailoring instruction to each participant's natural environment. Bragg's mission is to share centuries' worth of accumulated knowledge and key learnings with members of the surf industry to continue to advance awareness, best practices, and technological advancement to promote ocean safety and save lives. Bragg conducts like training summits at many locales worldwide. The proposed 2019 Half Moon Bay Bragg Training Summit will consist of 3 training days, tentatively set for October 25th, 26th, and 27th, when big wave surfers are likely to be in town. Day 1 is designed for the public in general and consists of classroom instruction, including Bragg's ocean risk management curriculum, CPR training, emergency medical interventions, and safety equipment presentations. Day 2 is designed for more advanced students and surfers and includes breath hold class and jet ski rescue training. The 3rd day is proposed to be offered for local emergency first responder agencies and will be customized to the local needs. Day 1 and 2 have a projected maximum cost of $36,700. The agency training for Day 3 has a projected maximum cost of $8,000. Bragg historically is able to charge summit participants a minimum registration fee of $200 per day. The total amount earned to offset costs from participant registrations fees would depend on the number of participants, demand, ultimate class sizes, and number of public district the number of the public that the district would desire to actually charge, as the district may wish to allow the public to participate for much less and or have several lower income persons not be charged at all. Local emergency first responder agencies who wish to participate may also contribute to costs, and we would ensure district deputy harbor masters are able to participate in the training at no additional cost. In addition, Bragg, in collaboration with the district, would seek out sponsorship from other companies to help with costs of the summit, as Bragg does all over the world. Overhead costs could also be substantially minimized if the district commits as summit organizer/sponsor quickly, as instructor flights and hotels may be able to be arranged at a considerably lower price than currently estimated if done well in advance. Because this is the first year the district will sponsor Bragg Training Summit event, it is hard to estimate the actual cost accurately. Based on current information and rough, very conservative budgeting, the maximum cost of the district would be $44,700 for the entire proposed 3-day Bragg Summit. The district may also opt to enlist assistance with event organization, hire a professional event organizer associated with Bragg to help maximize outreach and participation. The event organizer could also assist the district in setting up a professional surfing season opening day ceremony, which would be an opportunity for local public representatives and big wave surfers from around the world to say a few words in a fair and non-gender biased manner. If it appears this additional task might make costs surpass the authorized not to exceed $44,700, staff will return to the board for further consideration. Should the board approve moving forward with this water safety and emergency first aid training summit for the public, staff would ensure all monies are accounted for responsibly and would provide substantial safety benefit to the public in a fully transparent manner. If the proposed 2019 Bragg Water Safety Summit and Emergency First Aid Training Summit ended up saving one life, it would be well worth the cost. Based on the proven success of this event, the district could decide whether or not to budget for consecutive year events. Staff recommends the board authorize the interim general manager to enter into a professional service agreement with the Big Wave Risk Assessment Group for an amount not to exceed $44,700 to sponsor professional water safety and emergency first aid training. The reason that that there was discussion prior about whether or not this should be heard tonight is largely because in accumulating the information thus far, we don't have a lot of detail. It was believed that, in fact, after this item was actually sent out with the agenda, and it was too late to pull it, that more detail might be necessary for the commissioners to fully appreciate the benefit to the public and us be able to actually better demonstrate that, in fact, this $44,700 is in fact a worst case scenario if, for instance, zero, unlike ever I guess occurred with a Bragg event in the past, zero sponsors were to come forward and zero participants were to pay registration fees, which is not really I guess a fair, accurate number. However, it was, in my opinion, not legitimate for me to, without any kind of proof, to lead the commissioners to believe that the $44,700 might not be what is that the actual cost for this first year's event might be with the present information. And again, as I suggested earlier, there are potentially substantial cost savings if we act quickly, because hotel and airfares for the instructors and planning for the instructors can be made well in advance. Again, this is a training effort, first year idea for free public CPR water safety training, in addition to a second day for those that wish to participate in a more advanced training, considering that we've got one of the largest big wave surf sites in the world, and unfortunately have lost lives there. So staff thought was it would be beneficial to not only the public but to the surfers and to, in fact, our rescue safety teams themselves.
Thank you, John. Commissioner comments, questions? Tom?
Well, I said, I'm looking at 44,700 and thinking, we already do training with our Harbor Patrol, with the Coast Guard, with different groups that already exist here. And I question things like, why would big wave surfers be around except for locals, October 25, 26, and 27? With the contest, you pull people from around the world on short notice.
Do you
Personally,
want me to answer that?
well, let me just go through my comments, answer them all. So at 200 a day, I haven't heard any surfers. No one has just personally said to me, and that's okay, I don't talk to all the surfers, that they request additional training. We already have a large document, what is it, 72 pages, that talks about the interconnectedness of all the different agencies that work together on this contest, including the Coast Guard. And I'm just curious, we're talking about this big wave group. Has anybody approached our local surf organizations to see if they would prefer to put something like this on? Because, for instance, there'd be no hotel or travel expense if we had groups from Santa Cruz or even our locals here in the harbor put this on. So I'm just wondering why we're bringing a group from Hawaii or giving them first bite at the apple and not using a competitive process to say, how come we don't use local talent to do the same thing? Those are my comments.
Okay, I'll answer the questions that I can. Those dates will coincide with the opening ceremony for the Mavericks contest, and so the big wave surfers will actually be flying in to go to the opening ceremony, and so that would allow that community to participate. With respect to the question about who best to provide this kind of training, or why we didn't look for organizations here, the group in Hawaii is the best at training at all levels, and they've done these training seminars and workshops all over the world, and they have very high regard and they're experts at this. They would work with, the way they do their work is they come and talk to the community, all the different stakeholders, and bring in specialized training for this particular area with all the different individuals, and that they've got a very strong program, and so it's the only program in the world that exists like that. You had another question in there. Oh, the surfers. So I'll say more about this after we hear Virginia's comments, but the surf community, I've reached out to them because I am a surfer and I know a lot of the folks that are in the water in the lineup, and even from personal experience, I can tell you that the public does need training. Even some of the big wave surfers that are out there on a regular basis when there's a big swell, you know, they are good at getting on a jet ski and pulling out a guy that's in trouble, but after that, they don't have the kind of training they need to get the emergency response happening in a way that can save lives. I've had experiences down at Francis State Beach and at Montera where I've actually pulled people out of the water, and I would have benefited by having some of the kind of higher level training just as a member of the public. So I'll say a little bit more about it when it's my turn to speak on it. So Virginia?
So this is not the first time we've had this event. It's been going on for what, a couple decades? So why now? We have members of the public who have volunteered and they do train in our areas. I think we had a discussion on the various zones before. So there was I can't remember which meeting it was when there were surfers here talking about how they've trained. They're members of the public.
Would you like me to answer that question?
Either way, I'm happy to go ahead.
I can wait.
No, go ahead.
So what you're describing is related to, so National Marine Sanctuary has 4 zones for the operation of jet skis in the National Marine Sanctuary, and the reason for that was because jet skis do cause environmental harm, especially to wildlife, marine mammals and birds in particular. So NOAA established 4 different zones where the public can go out in jet skis. And the Mavericks contest, but also whenever there's a very large swell, NOAA made an exception, and that's, I think, what is that? Is that zone 5?
It's zone 5.
Yeah, so at Mavericks, zone 5, NOAA says under certain conditions, folks can go out and use jet skis. So the issue was that zone 1 or 4, I don't know what it is, what number
Zone
it is,
one.
that sits out in front of the harbor is a place that locals would like to practice. NOAA, because they didn't see anyone, they looked at over a couple of years how many people were actually using Zone 1, and they really didn't see very many people, so the issue was NOAA wanted to close the zone because it's expensive for them to keep it going. And the jet ski community was very interested in keeping it open, and particularly for training for folks that use jet skis out at Mavericks. That's what that was about.
I understand, yeah, so we have that locally, so I'm kind of in agreement with Tom in terms of local economic development and supporting local community volunteers, local businesses. I don't feel comfortable that this has not been an open bid. I understand that Commissioners Lorenz and Brennan have contacted BWRAG. I don't know if that's true or not. I've heard from members of the public that they think this is very expensive for a 3-day event. My understanding, based on the staff report, and tell me if I'm wrong, John, that we would have to basically amend the 1920 budget, which we just approved last month, to put this in as as an item. Is that correct? 44,700. It says in your staff report, it would require amending the 2019-2020 budget for this new line item, not to exceed 44,700.
Yeah, it's not a current line item. We've got roughly $17,000 at Oyster Point and $17,000 at Pillar Point for our normal staff training. And we would not want to affect that budget with this additional largely public training. It is arguable or questionable for anybody, I guess, even for my very well-trained staff that have gone all over the state and sometimes to local western states to get some of the best jet ski, personal watercraft training available. But it's always, I guess, questionable to assume that you know everything. And these instructors with Big Wave Risk Assessment Group have gone through what, from my understanding and from my research, substantial additional training and experience, and are recognized throughout the world. Australia, Hawaii, all over where they've held these summit events, are recognized as the premier experts. Now there always are going to be those that claim to be as good, I guess. My thoughts are just more that any training is good training, and to learn from different groups is always, in my opinion, keeping an open mind and learning from different groups is always beneficial training, and that's what I would look at it with my staff, and I believe that's the way my training staff believe as well. In addition, one of the flaws in this current staff report, and another reason why it could be argued we should have waited. However, again, a challenge with waiting is every day that we wait, and we want to still host it on the same late October days, costs are potentially going up. But had we waited and more thoroughly vetted who was going to do what, our own staff many of them are now CPR instructors. So we would be able to partner as part of the CPR instruction, which would also reduce these costs. However, that's not been thoroughly vetted, and again, the current form of this staff report, again, I put it as I felt was responsible to list the, as I say in the staff report, worst case scenarios and a very conservatively high worst case scenario budget for the board to consider. I don't know that, that any local personal watercraft, rescue watercraft operators would say that, that they wouldn't benefit from training from Bragg.
Okay, so that actually helps, thank you, but I'm gonna be very honest with you. Normally would not be opposed to something like this, except for the fact that, you're asking us to vote for something that's uncertain, that exceeds what we've even allotted for infrastructure improvements for safety at Oyster Point Marina, and I know that's not on the agenda, so I will not be discussing that. To me, I'm looking at the budget as its entirety, not just one item, which I think is a terrible mistake. Because we're a countywide agency and our budget should reflect that we're a countywide agency. So that's the problem that I'm having right now.
Could you explain that? I didn't quite
Yeah,
follow.
so last month, well, I don't wanna get into an item that's not on the agenda, but if we're gonna talk about amending the budget, right now, we have for the capital improvement, CIP, we have less than $40,000 allotted to South San Francisco's Oyster Point. And I am balancing the entire budget together because that's a safety issue as far as I'm concerned, as is this. And I understand where you're coming from, John, but we've had this event for how many, 20 plus years? And I know that, I think the last time we actually had an event was, I believe, in 2016, I think, or 2000, some early.
16.
Yeah, 2016 when the actual competition was happening. And at the time, I know that there was extensive training led by our harbor district in terms of being the incident commander. And we've partnered with the Coast Guard and is it the U.S. Army? Or who has the golf ball?
We partner with Callaway, yes.
Yeah, Callaway, yes, but even at the
Yes, Coast
federal
Guard.
level, we have partnerships there. So I guess my concern is, I just can't in good conscience vote for something that, we're gonna have to amend the budget for when we can't even take care of the property that we are obligated legally to manage. And it's a safety issue for me too. And I'm not saying I'm not open-minded, I totally get it. I totally understand the need for training, but, you're right, we don't know what our local people can or can't do. So those are the issues that I have, and, where are we gonna get the money from? You said we have $17,000, this is maybe a worst case scenario, a $44,000 or $45,000 item. How are we gonna get the other funds for this? Those are my concerns.
Any other comments?
I'm not against the training, I'm just
Are you talking?
against the cost.
Yeah.
So I'd like to make a few comments. So number one, the Mavericks contest has gone on for several years. I think the safety has improved a little bit out there. We've had we've had Mark Fu, who died during a contest, and all of the training folks that were trained were there. They didn't help him. Another person died, wasn't at a contest, but we've had another death out there at Mavericks, and we've had several close calls there. The other problem is that now that Mavericks has become kind of a rite of passage for many big wave surfers, we're getting a lot more people out in the lineup. So you go out to Mavericks at any particular big swell and there'll be 40, 50 guys out there. And if you're not a surfer, you don't really understand the dynamics of something like that, but what happens is there's competition for one wave, and when surfers are trying to get into one wave, it pushes people further and further outside of their skill level, and it makes it much more dangerous. And whether we like it or not, the Harbor District is one of the first organizations that has to be out there at any given day. So training our guys is really important at the highest level possible, regardless of cost, if you ask me. And this amount is almost nothing compared to losing a life, in my opinion. Then secondly, a lot of the guys that are out there now are really young. We've got 15-year-old kids out there. So training, offering even basic CPR training and lowering the bar for access to it is hugely important. With respect to this particular organization, this is what they do. We have people that do different bits of training, but there's only one organization in the world that puts it all together. They come and they work with all the local authorities, and they tailor the training specifically to the area. So that's why I think they're important to have here, as opposed to just one group that does CPR training or one group that does jet skis training. So I've been going to NOAA meetings over the years, mostly with respect to wildlife, but I do spend time with their enforcement officers, and we talk about what happens out at Mavericks, because it is a big issue for NOAA. They want to make sure that it's safe for the marine life, but also for the surfers. And one problem is that when the guys are out there on jet skis, most of them haven't really been trained in a holistic sense. They know, because they're experts on jet skis at big waves, they know how to go into the big waves and pull out someone that's taken a fall. They can do that part. But the next part is, what do you do after that? How do you do CPR? How do you assess the situation right there in the water? Who do you call? And what is the protocol? So what these guys do is they actually teach folks that are out there everything they need to do to try to save someone's life. Now, with the other aspects of training, the day one, I think it's also day two, if I'm not mistaken, it's a low-level training in day one, so that could be offered to the community. It's not that expensive, and we can teach water safety and CPR. Offer that to the local surf club, and then day two is a little more advanced, and then day three is fully advanced. So this is a comprehensive program that you will not find anywhere.
Again, if it is just cost that the board is considering, then maybe it would be a good idea to come back to the board after we have delayed for a bit and allowed sponsors to commit, because there's a chance, and actually Bragg generally, this is a profit-making thing for them. They generally, it doesn't end up being at a cost to the organizer, which is what the district would be. But I cannot say that we will get one sponsor. All I can say is that Bragg is going to do as they normally do and work with the organizer, the district in this case, if it's approved, and we'll look for sponsors. I'm not comfortable even saying names that have already been mentioned, but there are a lot of sponsors that have participated with Bragg in the past.
You're asking us to amend the budget. That's what this is asking us to do. And right now, we have 17,000, so if we, let's say worst case scenario comes true, and we're asked to pony up 45, where are we gonna get the remainder?
Can I just clarify this?
And it's, to me, it's not just the cost, it's balancing, if you wanna really talk about safety, infrastructure is a big issue for us on both marinas, and we've just allotted less than this to another marina that is under our jurisdiction and quite frankly is also very crowded.
So let me see if I understand.
No, I would like to hear Julie answer the question, please.
Excuse me. I'd like to understand what you said before. Is that okay with you, Julie?
Yes.
So what you're saying is, because the Harbor District is not spending X amount on Oyster Point immediately, you do not want to support this.
No, what I'm saying is if you care about safety, then you would actually look at the entire district instead of your one section.
I would just like
So,
So,
I would
okay.
like to assure all commissioners and the public that both of our marinas that the district manages are safe. Safety is a priority, and at any time, I encourage anybody in the public or commissioners to talk with our harbor master at Oyster Point or assistant harbor master at Pillar Point and ask them if at any time they have been denied any dollars, because the district does in fact have plenty of monies budgeted for any kind of safety repairs. So never has there been, and never will there be, in fact, at Oyster Point in December of 2018, last year, we finished a $500,000 project replacing the transformers on docks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 at Oyster Point Marina. Now, and right now, I have just had discussion with the harbor master at Oyster Point because he had a concern with some rusted electric panels on docks 12, 13, and 14. Again, I've got it documented where I told him safety is priority, get them evaluated immediately, and make repairs that are necessary, and we have those monies to do so.
Thank you. That's kind of where I was going. Thank you, John. Okay, Julie?
I just wanted to clarify something about the budget. This Harbor Commission approved a budget that was not at the line item level. It was at salary and benefit was one category, and then the next category was all other non-personnel costs. That was in the operating budget. This line item budget was in fact not taken into consideration on our estimates in the budget, but the budget is an estimate of the projected expenses moving forward. And it may or may not require a budget adjustment. It depends on whether the other estimates, maybe some of the other estimates were higher than what actuals are coming in at, and there might be some budgetary savings in other line items, but the Harbor Commission approved the budget at a very high level, and that's for the budget policy that the district has, that you approve it at the salary benefit level, the non-personnel level, and then approve the capital projects separately.
This is exactly my concern, is that the priorities are gonna be shifting because, God, I think it's not a great budget, but anyway, I understand where y'all are coming from. I think we have a public comment.
Public comment, please. Bud?
I just have a quick observation or concern. Having identified the really safety need surrounding Mavericks events and the fact that the Harbor District has taken sort of responsibility for safety of those events, this would really be a question for legal counsel. If a tragic death should occur on Mavericks under the conditions of the jet ski not being able or equipped to deal with the situation, due to the fact that this board has had this discussion, does it change the liability of the district in any way?
I don't know the answer to that. It's a good question. Can't read your writing. Kristen, is that right?
Yes.
It's an educated guess.
Good job. I'm Krista Lemke, the fairly new CEO of the Half Moon Bay Coastside Chamber of Commerce. And my comment is more in regards to if you were to move this on to a further discussion, because it would be a moot point if you vote on it tonight. But the Chamber of Commerce we have quite a few resources available to us through our membership. So if the company out of Hawaii is willing to work local vendors into their program. We have chamber members that help with CPR or are surf instructors or those types of things. So there is an opportunity that possibly the chamber could help make some connections if they are open to that. It might be against their rules, so who knows. And then also on the sponsorship front, we also have great relationships with a lot of local businesses that I think would find value in a program of this sort. And if we can bring a local element into it, that might be super helpful and really get the community involved. And the chamber would love to help with that, as well as help offsetting the cost if that's available. But we'd love to be a partner just to help you meet both your goals, both budgetary and community-wise and safety. So, thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to point out that this is, in my view, one of our responsibilities to we are a San Mateo County Harbor District. And so our jurisdiction is San Mateo County. So in our area, because it is such a strong tourist attraction and it's a place where people come to recreate near the ocean, the more training that we provide folks, the better. I can't tell you how many times I've been out surfing our local beaches and help people get out of the water from just their lack of knowledge. Okay, so I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to authorize the interim general manager to enter into a professional services agreement with the Big Wave Risk Assessment Group for an amount not to exceed $44,700 to sponsor a professional water safety and emergency first aid training summit. We have silence.
Well, my wheels are spinning. I'd love to second it, but I think the representative from the chamber, is it Crystalline or Crystalline?
Crystalline, like there's a name.
That's what I thought, Crystalline.
Crystal.
How do you say your last name?
Oh, Geet, not at all how it's spelled.
Okay.
I thought it was Geist. I'm glad I learned something.
No worries.
Okay, so the idea of getting sponsors to offset the cost of this, I'm not against the training, I'm against the cost. If we can get people that'll offset that, because we have a lot of things that we have to prioritize for, it doesn't matter capital improvement, this, that, or anything else. So the idea of bringing somebody out for profit for training, everybody loves this, but we've got a lot of demands on finite resources. So I'd sure like to find a way that we could qualify this to say they never show up again if we don't get a certain amount of sponsorship and offset the cost. So I will go ahead and second Ed's motion, but I'm totally against throwing away money just because some other group says, hey, we think we can help.
That's a good point. I'd like to say a few words about that. I appreciate you seconding. I think it's $44,000 or $50,000 is out of our total budget is not a lot of money for something like this. And this group did not approach us, we approached them. They are, without question, the best at what they do. And we have folks that can do bits and pieces of this, but they can't provide the whole holistic picture. And in our area, we don't have a lot of, we have the state parks lifeguards, but they can't cover all our beaches. State Parks doesn't have the funding to do that. And any of you that go to Montera or Surfers Beach or Dunes Beach, you see people out in the water or near the shore all the time. This is providing training to kids that are learning how to surf, or their instructors, or the surf club will go a long way to making our beaches safer, because you train 100 kids or 20 kids, they're going to be out in different places along our beaches. And if one kid is there to help someone out of the water or provide CPR and has the knowledge of who to call and how to deal with it, it's well worth the $40,000. And of course, I think John's right. He cannot, in good conscience, say that we will get funding from other sources, but I think that with some effort, we should be able to do that. It only makes sense.
So I have a question, because when I first got on the board, I think you, Ed, were still a member of the public before you got on the board.
Yes.
And we had a discussion about the West Trail, and I think that either you and or your wife were against keeping that paved or open. You wanted to let nature take it back, and I was very against that because I thought that was the only area where our public safety vehicles could go. So why, I guess it's just that's so inconsistent with this. Help me understand what happened, because it seems like when there's something that you think that is going to get in the way of whatever you want, it's not okay, but then you want the public to foot a $45,000 bill but not vote for safety for a marina for capital improvement. I just help me understand. I'm not against.
I'll try to help you understand. I'm not sure I completely follow.
Well, if you want safety, then be
processes,
consistent with safety as the issue.
Let's go through it one more time, and you can correct me if I'm misstating. With respect to the West Trail, one of the values of that area is the ecology of the West Trail, and to just put a road there is something that myself and what you're referring to at the time, I think it was a member of Surf Rider Foundation. We abjectly disagree with the consultants at the time who wanted to put just rock armoring along that West Trail to protect the dirt road. And we were advocating for at that time which what turns out to be a more progressive view of coastal protection, and that is to use what they call soft solutions. And that's what we're doing now on the West Trail.
I understand
We're
that.
doing that, so that's what that was about.
Well, that was part of it.
So with respect to safety, the safety at Mavericks in particular really comes from well-trained folks out there on their jet skis, especially when it's the level of high surf that NOAA says people can go out and be there with jet skis. So it's important to know the difference between someone out there on a jet ski that's not trained, because they're good at getting folks out of the water from, that some guy wipes out, takes a fall at Mavericks, they can go in there and pull them out. But there's a select few that know what to do after that, and that is the most important aspect of saving someone's life out in Mavericks. You have to know what to do after that. And there's examples that we could talk about where there's a good chance that had people been better trained, someone's life could have been saved.
Ed, how would you feel about bringing it back next month with the goal of saying we need a minimum 20,000, 25,000 in sponsorship already demonstrated? And if we could see that we have local sponsorship, if Bragg was able to contact some sponsors and say, don't worry, we got a lot of this covered. It's hardly gonna cost you anything.
You're working with the chamber. Thank you for your comments.
Yeah. I'd be a little hesitant to put a number on it, and a month to generate sponsorship might not be enough time, I would think. But that is a good idea to come back to it.
Well, come back to it or come back to it with what you're
With
suggesting.
sponsorship. Okay, without the.
But you know what I'm
25.
saying, it's a month is would be a high hurdle to, because most organizations, the sponsor have to go through whatever their management is. And
That's August, and we're talking about doing this in October,
yeah,
so we only have an extra month anyway at most.
To get sponsorships.
yeah. What do you think about that, John?
One of the reasons, I guess, that that I kind of push to, if we're going to do it, to kind of bring to the board for board's consideration a worst case scenario and try to demonstrate what I've come to believe is very valuable training for the public and for mid-range to big wave surfers. In a perfect world, we would be able to make a commitment, and then Bragg would commit resources after we've committed to be sponsors to do what they do, which is, of course, get sponsorship and reach out to all of their contacts, and at the same time, our social media team and working in conjunction with Bragg and staff would try to reach out to everyone that's historically been a sponsor for the Maverick Surf event. And again, the surf event, the actual event doesn't occur every year, but there are surfers surfing there every year. And obviously right out here on Surfers Beach, there's a large surf community in the area. And therefore manufacturers, again, I'm reluctant to name names that I've been actually told are already in discussion with Bragg, because I don't know the outcome of that, and I don't want to compromise those opportunities.
Right.
So it is, again, I had no problem with coming back to this next month with more information if they're comfortable in sharing with us, some more, I guess, confirmed potential names. At present, I've been asked specifically not to reveal some information, specifically some documents that they've asked me that are their working documents that I've not even got copies of, that they've shown me and taken with them, and then verbally told me information about potential sponsors, but I'm not comfortable saying something I can't prove.
Right.
I again don't want to mislead the board. So at present, I think the board needs to make a decision based on worst case scenario, but to some degree, I wish I had more information to give you about Bragg specifically. Obviously they've got a very professional website, and I believe that they are a professional organization. Again, I would be hesitant to believe that any professional rescue group wouldn't benefit from their additional training. Again, I would put our own staff up against anybody. However, I believe any training is good training, and that even our staff will benefit from this training from Bragg.
So would you like to amend the motion then?
No, mine was a suggestion to see how you felt. I don't think I made a motion.
I definitely see the value in spending a little more time on this, and I understand that you're hesitant to spend for the district to spend that amount of money.
listening to what John's saying, and it sounds like people are working on sponsorships, and the amount of time we've spent talking about this, basically I'd say is a waste of time, to be honest, for something that should have been a lot simpler and better vetted when it came to us. So why don't we just call for the question and get it over with?
Okay.
Commissioner Matoush,
Yes.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Yes.
Commissioner Chincarelli.
No. And again, it's because of the cost, not because I don't believe in safety and training. I do, so I'd like that to be reflected in the record.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kirsten. And Bud. Okay, item 12, San Mateo County Harbor District Code of Ethics and Values. Approve amended policy 1.1.1.
Okay, Commissioners, the Harbor Commission approved the district's current policy 1.1.1, which is San Mateo County Harbor District Ethics and Values on July 15, 2015. The district based its policy on the Code of Ethics and Values developed in 1999 by the City of Santa Clara. The Marcula Center for Applied Ethics at Santa Clara University worked with the City of Santa Clara to create its policy and reflect the issues and concerns of a complex and diverse society. Staff compared the district's current ethics and values policy with the California Special Districts Association sample policy, which had been revised in 2017. The attached proposed amended policy includes recommendations made by the CSDA along with suggested changes related to the applicability of the code and other minor adjustments. As proposed, the code will apply to district representatives, including the harbor commissioners, district council, district staff, volunteers, and members of the district's committee. Staff is recommending approval of the amended policy, and if that approval is given, staff will create posters and laminated copies similar to that which you have on attachment 4, which is also a blown-up version of what is in front of you this evening. That's the end of the
Okay, thank you.
discussion.
Questions, comments? Virginia?
Yeah, I obviously am totally for anything that promotes ethics, ethical behavior and transparency. Unless I missed something, and it's very easy that I could have. I'm assuming that this red line is what you want us to approve tonight, is that right? Because I didn't see anything in here about transparency, and I don't know if I would feel comfortable leaving it to chance and an implication of transparency, but again, I could have missed something.
Attachment 1 is the.
Is this what we're voting? This is the
Yeah,
red
and then
line?
there's a clean copy, which is attachment 2,
Okay.
which is much easier to read than attachment 1. But as you can see, there's very little changes in what the policy currently has.
Yeah, I mean, transparency is a cliche sometimes with elected boards, so that's the only reason that, and again, like I said, I may have missed it, but help me out, Julie, if I missed it, tell me, because I didn't see it. I mean, it goes through all of the things like conflict of interest for finances, like free of bribes, unlawful gifts, etc., conduct.
Yeah, basically,
But in terms of open government, I know we have the Brown Law, but sometimes, I mean, you're gonna be comprehensive about ethics and acting with integrity, because I've seen firsthand that we're not always doing that here. I would like to add something in terms of transparency or open government, just to reinforce what we know the law to be and what I think some people have violated.
There is.
And I'd be willing to vote on it. I'd like, if we can bring it back, you would need more time to add language. And actually, we've never been asked to add language until now.
We can go through the main steps of the Code of Ethics and Values, and there is some references and making sure that you're treating everyone with integrity and you make impartial decisions free of bribes, unlawful gifts, narrow political interests, financial or other personal interests that impair my independence of judgment or action that could be construed as transparency language. I extend equal opportunities and due process to all parties and matters under consideration. If I engage in unilateral meetings and discussions, I do so without making voting decisions or any improper and unauthorized representations on behalf of the district.
I mean, we have this already. I mean, just this hasn't even been complied with by people on our board right now. So I'm not against it. Like I said, I would want more explicit language in terms of
Could you give me an example of what you mean by explicit language?
Yes. It's something, I don't know, I don't want to like make this something about transparency, and I don't know, I have to think it through. I mean, I'm not as quick and as good as maybe you or anyone else to put this out on the fly, and I certainly don't want it to be construed as something definitive, which is the reason I hesitate. I mean, again, I'm for it. I just would like more time so that the whole board, which we should be doing since it's a board policy, can actually spend time putting language in here. I didn't have time to do this. We just got this tonight, so.
You got the larger version of it tonight, the
Yeah,
smaller
no, I know,
version's in
but
the
you know
packet.
what? Yeah, and I actually read the packet, and again, I do
So
read my
you're saying
packet,
you're-
and I would like more time just so I can think of some language that, you know, about transparency and open government, and so that's just my, that's just one person's opinion.
And one thing I forgot to mention is that this did go to the Governance and Policy Committee,
That's right.
and
This is a board policy, so I'd like more time as a board member to review this and come up with language. That's all I'm saying.
It's not up to Julie to decide. It's
I know,
up to
but
us.
she's addressing me, so I'm addressing her back, so please let me do so.
Any more questions, comments?
Nope.
No? Virginia? Do you-
No,
So I have a few comments. One of the ideas about transparency is that we as an organization are transparent. It's hard to imagine an individual being transparent. The idea of what you see here makes the organization transparent.
we
It
are
says-
the organization as well, right?
It says that by these behaviors, these are the ethical behaviors, and as a result, our organization will be transparent. It's just a matter of language. And one reason to do this is to remind all of us, not any one of us specifically, but all of us, that these are important rules of behavior, especially at our meetings, because our meetings get excited, because we're all very passionate about what we believe. And this will help us remember that we are public, and we're in the presence of the public many times, and we're being filmed. And so it's useful to have this on a wall, I believe, because it tells us, it will remind us when we're getting a little hot that we should cool down a little bit and have ethical and professional behavior. Do you have any more on this, Julie?
The only thing I can do is go through that, if we would like to talk through the main points of this.
So I would like to make a comment, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I agree with you, Ed, that this is conduct at a board meeting, no question that, you know, these things we must observe. But just as importantly, or more importantly, I think how we conduct ourselves when we're not at a board meeting in front of a camera is just as important. And that is the problem that I'm having. Not that this is, first of all, Julie, this is a great first step. I just would like to have a little more time. You know, if we have our special meeting next week or before the end of July for the general manager's situation, then, I mean, I could come back with something. So that's all I'm asking. Again, I will just say for the record that behavior is not just at a public board meeting. You are an elected public official. We represent a government, public, countywide agency. Our conduct, in some ways, we're held to a higher standard as we should be. So this should not only apply to our meetings and our committee meetings, it should apply to us as elected officials, whether or not we're in a meeting. That's all I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing with you.
I don't think anyone would disagree with that.
Well, I just want to
But
make it very clear because that has never been stated.
Okay, so noted. Well,
So again, I mean, if I could just, I mean, it's totally up to it's up to, you know, us tonight, but I mean, I would love to just be able to bring it back. I think we're going to try to schedule a special meeting, is that right? For the
we
general-
will have a special meeting with respect to
Yeah, but we
something
can-
else.
Yeah, but we can add other agenda items as we have done in the past. So that, I would just like more time, that's all.
Well, let me put it this way. This is important, and I believe that if we are going to discuss this again, I'd prefer that we do it in our normal
Regular
meeting so that people will be here to discuss it, to hear the discussion rather than at a special meeting where it's hard for the public to be here.
That's fine. I mean, I just was trying to, I didn't know how quickly you wanted it to be done. I mean, if you want to move
It'd be
it.
nice to get this done, but if you have
I just want
substantial
it.
changes and you want the public to hear them, we can do that. I don't see
So
any
we
reason
could do
can't.
that. Do you want to move it to August? I mean, I don't care either at
Is
this.
there any pressing reason to not move it to August that you know of, Julie?
No, the policy that the district currently has is good, and it's pretty much in line with what
The changes are.
It's just what CSDA has recommended to be
Right.
included in it, and there's no reason that we can't postpone it to August.
Okay. The other
Okay,
way
or
to,
whatever's the soonest, because I agree with you about.
well, I
having-
think we need to do it in a public meeting so the public can be aware. Now, the other point to be made is that this is something that as a district, we should revisit every so often, every quarter, every 6 months, every year, whatever makes sense.
This
Because
policy?
yeah, because the world is evolving on these things, and it's good, it will serve also as a reminder to all of us and the public about these values.
And, okay.
The special district of distinction
Mhm.
requires that the board review all
Yeah.
of the policies every other year.
Mhm.
So I do think that that would be a good idea to look at this.
Any other comments?
Are you okay with moving it out?
Move it out, yeah, that's fine, anything you want.
Okay, so then
Are you
we'll take
okay
this
with
up at
that?
our, yeah, I'm fine with it. We'll take this up at our next meeting, and that way,
Next
You'll come.
regular meeting?
yep, the next regular meeting, and
I'll come back.
maybe
I mean, there might,
we can send out a reminder that to review this, so that you're not caught unawares.
thank you.
All right. Item 13.
Item 13 is a discussion item. It's regarding the anti-harassment, anti-retaliation, and non-discrimination policy, and the required sexual harassment training. The Harbor Commission approved the district's current equal employment opportunity policy on January 8, 2016, the non-discrimination policy on October 1st, 1997, the harassment, discrimination, and retaliation prevention policy on August 3rd, 2016, and the policy against workplace violence on December 5th, 2007. The California state laws have changed since the passage of the policies, and if you would like to refer to attachments 3 and 4 for the most recent legal updates, and I'll go over those in a little bit also. The district has contracted with Ogletree Dinkins to act as its labor and employment council. The Governments and Policy Committee and staff is working with Karen Tynan, a counsel for Ogletree Dinkins, to prepare updates to the policies listed above. In addition, Senate Bill number 1343 was approved on September 30th, 2018, and this law requires a 2-hour sexual harassment training for supervisory employees and a 1-hour training for all non-supervisory employees by January 1st, 2020. I'm working with Karen Tynan currently to prepare a customized training, and we've tentatively scheduled 2 trainings, one for September 12th and the other one on December 11th, and that information isn't in the board package right now because that's the most recent information that happened today. So if you look at attachment 1, that is a list of all of the current policies that the district has. As I said before, many of them are outdated, and the HR laws continue to be updated on an annual basis, even sooner than that. Then also attached to this package, and attachment 2 is the sample CSDA policies, which we can use in order to craft some new policies. Attachment 3, which is on page 13-26, is a copy of Senate Bill 1343, and it basically is changing the current requirements that employers with 50 or more employees are to provide at least 2 hours of training for supervisory employees within 6 months of hire. The district is complying with that requirement currently. The bill that was approved in September 30th of 2018 now changes that from 50 employees down to 5 employees. And it includes supervisory employees have to have 2-hour training, but all employees, non-supervisory employees, and that includes temporary employees and volunteers, have to have another 1-hour sexual harassment training. The bill also requires the department, the State Department, to make informational posters and fact sheets, as well as online training courses regarding sexual harassment prevention, and that be available to all employers and to the members of the public. There's a lot of laws regarding the information that is provided to people who are newly hired to the district, and we're currently giving them our current policy, but that current policy does need to be updated for the current laws that have passed. Attachment 4 is SB 188, which is a discrimination. This is a newly passed legislative or Senate bill, and that was passed on July 3rd, 2019. It basically race and includes ancestry, color, ethnic group identification, and ethnic background, and is inclusive of traits historically associated with race, including but not limited to hair texture and protective hairstyles. And protective hairstyles includes but is not limited to such hairstyles as braids, locks, and twists. So that's the newest update to that, but again, as I said, our discrimination and equal opportunity policies haven't been updated in a while, so there is other protected statuses in this section of the law. Attachment 5 on 13-35 is California Legislative Joint Committee on Rules, and what it is recommendations of the Subcommittee on Sexual Harassment Prevention and Response. I'd like to go through this report a little bit. Some of the things that we can consider when we're putting together this new policy is that the California legislature has done a lot of work on this, and some of the recommendations include transform the workplace culture to promote respect, civility, and diversity, and every person's responsibility to build that culture. You should address your problems early, encourage reporting of all incidents that diminish respect and civility. You should investigate reports promptly by subject matter experts. You create an independent panel of subject matter experts to determine facts and recommend the House's response to reports. And you maintain a policy on disclosure related to sexual harassment and protect confidentiality. This again is information that can be included in our drafting of the policy, and I'm working with Karen Tynan and Jill, and I can't remember Jill's last name, but she's part of that same group, to address some of these issues. On page 13-45 through 74, it provides a report on climate survey results for the legislature. So this just gives us a purpose. The purpose is to create a fair, accepting, and open culture free from discrimination and harassment. You measure organizational climate, identify strengths and opportunities, recommend actions to improve climate, and reduce instances of reported harassment. The summary recommendations of this report is on page 69, and basically change management for policies, procedures, and processes. Policies and procedures assessment. The review is assess policies and procedures and their relevance to the current climate. Are they out of sync with the culture? Are they clearly defined? You reset, you educate employees on appropriate avenues to log complaints, be transparent about what happens once the complaint is made. You evaluate, frequently evaluate the usage, understanding, and execution of the policy, procedures, and process. And then you enforce, and you balance the confidentiality of process with transparency and investigation, and follow up with person reporting. The next page that I'll bring your attention to is page 80. And that's what the state did is they did a compliance review of multiple state departments, and some of the things that they looked at is the areas of mandated training, the appointments, and the EEO, and they had quite a few violations, and so I believe that it's the duty of this harbor commissioner and staff to make sure that we're in compliance with all these things. So the various serious issues that the California state departments had is that sexual harassment prevention training was not provided for all supervisors. And 10 of the 17 departments reviewed did not comply with that. Ethics training was not provided for all filers, and 9 out of 17 departments didn't comply with that. And supervising training was not provided for all supervisors, and 8 of 17 departments reviewed. Those were some of the statistics for that. I will have to say that everyone is up to date on their ethics training and their sexual harassment training, so I think we're doing good on that. But it helps to have a policy to help support, you know, the newest laws, the newest rules, and the governance and policy committee, I believe, is making strides and going in those directions. Page 111 just again shows a matrix of some of the state agencies that didn't comply with the sexual harassment training. And so you can see a lot of the percentages are way below 100%. The next page, 112, this kind of shows the complexity of what is going on in today's world. They hired a person as a director of workplace conduit unit, and this person is actually has to be an attorney, maintain active membership in the California bar, and some of the things they do is do the intake and investigation and resolution of complaints of discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. And, you know, this is, you know, a much larger organization than ours, but we can use this information in order to put together something that is more manageable for an agency of our size. And then the last page is page 115, and this talks about the spectrum of sexual misconduct at the work. So it goes from, you know, non-offensive is something like, oh, nice outfit, awkward or mildly offensive, involves implying gender distinctions that are unfavorable to women, for example. Offensive is gender insensitive or superior manners. Highly offensive is intentionally denigrating. And evident sexual misconduct is usually crude or physically intrusive. And egregious sexual misconduct typically involves coercion, sexual abuse, and assaults. So with this, this is just an informational item at this point. We are planning on bringing a draft policy to the next Governance and Policy Committee meeting that is tentatively scheduled for the second Thursday of August.
Great, thank you. Any questions, comments?
I have a comment. First of all, Julie, this is really a great start. I think that it's a step in the right direction. The only issue that I have, and it has nothing to do with the quality of Karen Tynan's work, is that I know that she was involved with the women surfers, what is it, equity for women surfers, that whole issue with Commissioner Brennan. And I talked to Karen Tynan and Commissioner Brennan, and I put the letter together to give to the Coastal Commission as individuals. And I believe Ms. Tynan was doing the work pro bono. And I don't know what the situation is. I just am worried that, I know that Commissioner Brennan wants this, and I support that, but just to make sure that there just doesn't look like an appearance of impropriety, should we be getting another legal counsel involved with this? Because
Actually, you're asking for a legal opinion of our finance person, so you.
oh, okay, yeah. I mean, I just, well, okay, yeah. But that's my concern, is that
Okay,
it doesn't look as clean as it could be, so that this policy doesn't appear tainted, for lack of a better word, tainted as in like tainted evidence kind of thing. So I'm just saying that it just doesn't, the appearance of impropriety could be there. I think she does great work, but I know that Commissioner Brennan and she have worked together. I've worked with her as well, like as I said, doing the letter. So that's my biggest concern.
Okay, well, thank you. Tom, do you have any comments?
No, I think, working along, you've got a lot of supportive material here.
Yeah.
I think everybody's on the right track, bring us up to date.
So I would like to point out that the policy committee will be working on this, and if you are the public or a commissioner for that matter, if you want to sit in on those meetings, you're definitely allowed to do that, and just because of the Brown Act, you're just not allowed to comment. But it could be instructive to sit in and hear the conversations that are happening between the different parties that are there.
Oh, I've been keeping up with the legislation. Again, I don't think that's the issue. I think that, again, we're.
I'm asking, I'm just making a comment that if because the reason we have committees is so we can bring members of the public in to help us discuss these things, and it's impossible to bring all that to a board meeting. So if you are interested in hearing the discussions that happen at these meetings, I encourage you to come and sit in. I do that at some of the other meetings when I'm not a member of the
Well, I
committee, if I
understand.
have an interest.
But that's the reason we also have board meetings, so is that we can discuss this as a board and voice our concerns. So I don't think that, just again, appearances, that I don't look like I'm violating the Brown Act. I'm just expressing my concern of having Ms. Tynan be involved this intimately with a policy that, and I'm not saying she's doing a bad job. It's just maybe I'm overzealous about that, but it's the appearance of impropriety. But I do think we're doing the right thing.
I hear you, and I think it's been noted on the record.
We don't
So
have
this was
to
just
approve
information
anything, though,
only,
right?
so
Yeah.
I'd like to say that I'm really happy that we're doing this. It's great that the state assembly spent so much time and energy on this, because they have much more funding and a lot more people to work on it, and quite a few world-renowned experts went to this meeting and gave their opinions, including Commissioner Brennan. So, thank you very much. So where are we on our agenda?
The
We have
consent
12, so we're
item.
going to the hold items now? 13, yep. Okay, well, let's go to the consent items that were pulled. We'll just do them in order. So bills and claims. That was
Yes,
you.
I pulled that. I just had a quick question regarding legal fees on the back page. Let me see, it was for the amount of $50,429.75 for Goyette Griffiths. What is that for? I don't recall, and we may have done something years ago, but I don't recall ever approving them to be an attorney for, and what is this for? I thought actually that was the firm that was working on the sexual harassment thing at first, but obviously that's not the case. So who is Goyette Griffiths? And what are we paying $50,429 for?
I know that was prior to when I started working here. I might have to get back with you on the answer to that question. I know that there was a lot of things going on in the beginning of the year, like the redistricting.
But I
I'm
don't think,
only,
did we do that with them? I don't know.
yeah, I'll just have to come back to you on that.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with that firm either.
Well, I'm just curious as to why that bill for 50,000 plus is on here then. If we don't even know what, I mean,
Okay,
is this,
so
do you know?
I don't, so we'll have you come back to us at our next board meeting, if you don't mind.
Is this,
No, I don't mind, can we?
is this
can we
part of the
approve
approval for this?
claims
Without
Without
this?
that, yeah, so
Okay,
that we can.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve, oh, I'm sorry, Tom, do you have,
No, that's fine.
I'll make a motion to approve bills and claims, without the charge to Goyette Griffiths in the amount of $50,429.75. So I'm assuming that this is going to be, 702,930.93 minus the 50,000, so.
Well, this has already been paid.
Oh, I'm sorry, which?
Yeah, the
Oh, okay,
50,000's
sorry.
already been paid. It's just a report of, a running total of
Right.
all of the payments to date.
So we paid a legal firm without knowing what we paid for.
No, I don't think that's an accurate statement.
Well, no one can tell me it's on a public document. I'm just curious, is that,
We
okay?
can't tell you at this moment.
There was obviously when invoices are approved, there's much more detail
Right.
than just Coyote Griffith. That does not, I think there should have been more detail here. At least.
But depending on the item, sometimes the detail has to be disclosed in closed session.
Right.
That's absolutely right.
But no one can tell me what
That-
this is for, so I get that.
We
So
got that.
are we, so we're approving bills and claims for 702,930.93, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So,
Would you like to make a motion?
yeah, but I just have one question. So then, so you're gonna get back to us, Julie and or John, with the next, we've already paid for this. And I guess, what is the process for hiring legal counsel? For what? That's the other thing, lack of transparency. This is exactly what I'm talking about. But I will make a motion to approve bills and claims in the amount of 702,930.93. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Mathush,
Aye.
Commissioner Champerlain,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz.
Aye. Okay, so item number 6 in consent, salary schedules and special compensation. I believe
I
you pulled
pulled that, yeah, just a quick question, actually, John, or the search committee, I guess. I know that compaction was an issue, if you look, on page, well, actually, it's in the report about the issue of wage compaction. And I know that when we were dealing with the general manager, or working with the general manager the former general manager, compaction was an issue for him and the rest of his staff. So as we move forward with the, general manager search for the new general manager, I would just like us to remember that compaction is an issue still with regard to the very top level all the way down. So is this compaction number or these issues here, this does not take into consideration the possibility of having compaction at the general manager level?
Julie actually brought that to my attention, and since I'm interim general manager
Yeah.
at present, I just asked that I be not included in that.
Right.
And
Understandable.
But yeah, as we move forward, I think depending on since the board actually hires and makes an individual totally separate
Yeah, decision.
contract
Yeah.
with the general manager, I think it's just a unique situation with the general manager.
Right.
Yeah, no, I get it, but I know that the compensation piece can be affected in terms of salary increase, just, from the top down. So maybe there's no question here as much as it's an issue that I
We did
want.
talk about the CPI increase, like a 3% increase that you had discussed with me, and I removed myself from that.
Yeah, no, I get it. So really, there's no question as much, unless you can answer something, but there's really no question. Maybe it's just the thought process that I'd like to bring up to I know you're on the ad hoc committee, just the compaction issue at that level as well. It was an issue before when we dealt with the general manager's contract renewal in the past, which I think he may have missed that meeting, so I just want to bring it up as an issue.
Okay, so noted.
Thank
Would
you.
you like to make a
Oh,
motion?
yes, I will move to approve the salary schedules for, and special compensation and make them publicly available.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Chancarelli,
Aye?
Commissioner Lorenz,
Aye.
Commissioner Mateusz.
Aye.
Okay, you also pulled 7?
Yeah, you did too.
Right, so let's hear your version, and then I'll chime in.
Okay, you might be able to answer some of my questions.
Could be.
So I was just struggling to understand what the need was for the change in the name. I agree that there's an issue in terms of, climate change and the need to be resilient. What I don't want is, I think that there's so much hyperbole around the issue that changing it to the word crisis, and I can see where it can be a crisis, might make the issue less credible, and it makes us as a commission less credible because it sounds more emotional than just the word climate, or the words climate change resilience, which I actually liked. That's all that's just my opinion.
Okay. The reason I pulled it, and then I'll answer your question. The reason I pulled it is that our committee is having a discussion about changing the name because there's a lot of different ways to see this. We, at our committee meeting, we had a very lively discussion. Wish you were there. You would have been interested to hear it. But we didn't come to any conclusion or decide on a specific name, and we said we would come back to it and continue the discussion. So,
I don't think I'm on this committee.
no, you're not, but as a member of the public,
I
you can
know,
join. It's an interesting discussion. So the reason for wanting the word crisis in our climate change meeting is because many folks believe, and the paper The Guardian posted a very strong argument for the use of crisis when referring to climate, because most scientists believe that the planet is in a state of crisis, and using climate change just wasn't a strong enough statement when one is talking about the changes in climate that are occurring. So the Guardian made a very strong case for using that instead of climate change, because climate change sounds like the weather's going to be different tomorrow, and it'll come right back maybe the next day. So they wanted to, the discussion is more about emphasizing that anthropogenic heating of the planet is a fact, and that the planet is heading for a crisis. Well, actually, we are in a state of crisis right now, and that the general public is just starting to catch up with the scientists. So the reason to use the word resiliency is because it's a statement of doing something, and that's what our committees are supposed to do. We're supposed to do something, and also the funding agencies talk about resiliency because the idea is you, as an organization, realize and admit that sea level is going to change. It's a known fact. Our climate is changing, which means we'll have more severe weather and storms. And what can we as an organization do to be resilient to the impacts of climate change? And we're doing some things like that already. One example is the way we're approaching taking care of the West Trail. Not just putting a parts armoring there, we're doing a resilient structure there. And Coastal Commission, county are all looking towards those kinds of solutions. The problem with this long name is it's not a great committee name because it's just too long and it's hard to understand what it means. So we're going to continue the discussion and then bring it back to the board once we've come up with a better name.
You mean other than the Climate Crisis Committee?
Yeah.
So you're saying that this isn't the final name?
Well, the reason I pulled it is because in our committee we decided not to change the name yet because we're still discussing this.
Okay. But we're being, okay.
Does that make sense?
Kind of. I think so, but we're being asked to approve the proposed name change. Are you saying that that's not the case then, or am I getting something mixed
No,
up?
we are being asked to approve it, that's on this, and the reason I pulled it is because I'd like to make the argument that our committee is asking the board to give us more time to come up with a better name.
Then climate crisis.
Yes.
Okay. So do we need to vote on this, or just can we give direction to kick it back to the committee for more discussion, or how do you wanna?
Well, I'll just make a motion to refer it back to the committee.
Okay, I'll second that.
So,
I don't know if
I'll
Tom
third
has any
okay,
sorry.
so we've made a motion, Virginia,
Tom
probably
might have.
second.
And I just wanna say, so this is being kicked back and to the
Yeah.
committee.
Yeah, basically going back to the,
We're gonna send it back to our committee for further discussion.
All right, Commissioner Chancarelli?
oh wait, did you have something to say, Tom?
The only thing I have to say is, I think it's admirable what the United States is doing, but this year I've already traveled to several countries. And I saw an article where 90% of the plastic pollution in the oceans comes from third world countries, not the United States. Having driven through parts of Mexico where any little valley or turnout, there's a half mile of garbage. When you can't drive in any further, they set fire to it so you can drive in a little further in about a week. I've seen similar things in Africa, massive plumes of smoke, and when you get within a mile or two, there's nothing but plastic bags on the fences. So there's no garbage, there's no consideration of climate change or any awareness there. So it's admirable that the United States has it, but we're a small cog in the entire world. So that comment being said, I'd just like to say, yeah, please work on whatever change you support and feel good about here.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments? Okay,
Okay, Commissioner Chancarelli?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
aye.
Commissioner Mateusz?
Aye.
So, I know.
Brown out.
Another.
Yeah,
item
I
for
pulled this,
monthly
just-
capital projects.
Yeah, so thanks for this report, John. I just had just a quick question regarding OPM doc, or the OPM part on page 8 for doc 12 and 13, 14 is dock replacement. And I know it was initiated March 2018. So this is just an update. So how far along are we on this?
It was initiated, as it says, March 2018.
Yes.
As then Director of Operation under the former General Manager, I had put together a request for proposal in August of 2018, and for the replacement of dock 12, and then as an alternative 1, and then replacement of docks 12, 13, and 14 as an alternative 2, because it is my belief and was my recommendation to the former General Manager, and will continue to be my recommendation, that when we do replace docks at Oyster Point Marina in the East Basin, we replace all of them at once, because it's most cost effective, both for design engineering and for the actual construction. That's been my experience of what's done worldwide, when at all possible. So the RFP was put together by myself, and actually October 12th, I submitted that RFP result to the former general manager, who was working obviously under you as president, and with my recommendation that it come to the board at the board meeting on November 14th. For whatever reason, the board or the former general manager, a combination of the two, elected not to hear the results of that RFP and make a decision. I believe the reasoning was because at the time, we were in negotiations with the city of South San Francisco regarding the JPA being transferred to a memorandum of understanding, and subsequently at that November 14th meeting, the MOU was discussed and later signed that month in November. That MOU is in effect now because the board approved it, and it has specific guidelines on when actions by the district are required and actions by the city are required. And my understanding and my belief is that our Board of Harbor Commissioners are meeting our obligations under the 2018 MOU. And in fact, this board just approved a budget which reflects in 2021, we're going to, meaning as soon as July of next year, we're going to be putting monies toward design engineering to replace all of the docks.
Okay.
That answer your question?
So my understanding from the budget that was approved and which I was not happy about in this, for this particular item, and I did not approve, but I didn't vote for it, but I understand the board did, was that we might have to go out to find money for that part of the 5-year CIP, because most of the money was allotted to, $14 million was allotted to Pillar Point and the admin for the first part. So what if we can't fund this? I'm not trying to be hypothetical, I am curious and concerned about it. That's the only reason I flagged it, is just that I am concerned that based on last month's meeting for this item, for the budget, that, I think we're looking at, I don't have it memorized, like about 1.2 million for the last 2021, somewhere 2022, I can't remember, somewhere around there. And that when I asked the question that we might have to find other sources. So are we gonna have enough money to do this when it comes time to do this?
Obviously nobody, I don't consider myself a fortune teller.
No, I know, but that's the whole purpose of a budget.
Understood. I will say that, and Julie weigh in, I would say that in 2021, when we currently have budgeted to do the design engineering for replacement of docks 12, which at that time I'll be bringing forward the same RFP that I've already prepared, because I'm the one that prepared it, to the board for consideration, which will, with my recommendation, that in fact the design engineering actually not just be for dock 12, but be for docks 12, 13, and 14. And then my recommendation will later be that we replace all the docks at the same time. So we save on monies for mobilization, dredge episode that may need to occur, and demobilization, along with the more efficient construction costs of doing all the docks at once. So all of that said, historically, the district's reserves, despite budgeting, continue to increase. Despite whatever the budgets might reflect we're going to spend. We do hope to eventually make progress with the current projected estimated $14 million project at the Johnson Pier Terminus, and the board has been proactive in approving design engineering to begin. So that is taking place at present, but it is not, I don't think, again, I'm not a fortune teller and I don't propose to be one, but I don't think it realistic that the district is going to pay that entire $14 million. There are many grant opportunities, one of which I hope to be bringing to the board in a special meeting as soon as next week.
Okay.
So, we have to assume, of course, worst case scenario. We have to assume again, worst case scenario in our budgeting that we're paying every penny of
Yeah.
everything.
I agree.
But likewise at Oyster Point Marina, as we are moving forward with replacement of any docks that are for public use, we will be exploring grant opportunities, no matter what.
Okay,
Okay.
great, thank you. That's all I have for that. Yeah, oh,
Tom?
2 comments on page 8.2, under the Pillar Point Launch Ramp Dredge Project. 4 lines up from the bottom, it says, construction to start mid-July. I'm extremely happy to say that the long reach excavators are at the launch ramp right now, and people are thrilled
yay.
to see that. It's been a long time coming, it's been a massive source of frustration. Thank you for getting that project as far as you did.
Yeah.
And then on page 8.4, Pillar Point Harbor EV Space Project, HMB requiring EV parking for RV restroom CDP. I would tremendously urge us to seek the city of Half Moon Bay to fund that entire thing. And I need you to just stop and think that they've been getting over $100,000 a year in transient occupancy taxes. So they've got over $2 million, and if they can't buy a simple little plug for us, something's wrong with their asking for that, and we need them in the harbor more.
Okay.
Are we working with the city of Half Moon? I mean, we've worked with them obviously on this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so,
There's no harm in asking.
absolutely not. I agree with Tom that we should not only be asking, but consistently asking if we're kind of being rejected or pushed aside.
And I'd like to just make one note on the budget. Thank you very much, Julie, for constructing a budget that allows us to ask questions like the question Commissioner Crawley was asking, because it's so clear in the way that you've written it that it lets us project into the future and see where our projects are going to need a little bit of funding and where we're going. And having the ability to do that will absolutely allow us to seek funding in the right amount of time. So really appreciate your work on that. So we need a motion?
Is this to accept? Yeah, it's just to accept, right? It's
Receive
just to
and file.
receive, yeah.
So no.
Yeah.
And you also pulled number 9.
Yeah, I just had a quick question, for the second paragraph or under the background section, Julie or John, where it says that, this month-to-month security services, contract extension would happen until it is determined whether or not security services are needed on a permanent basis at Oyster Point Marina. So I'm just curious, who determines whether or not Oyster Point Marina needs security on a permanent basis?
I can answer that.
I mean, I didn't see the answer in here, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah. It was previously determined all the way back from documents that I have found that even Glenn Lazoff, the former acting general manager, recommended we go through a public process in order to put out an RFP for security services, and not continue to go with this particular, or enter into long-term contracts without the competitive RFP process. So that said, we also have a lot of changes taking place at Oyster Point Marina. The guard shack has been removed. We've been in, I think, good faith discussions with the city of South San Francisco and their contractor to ensure that our tenants' safety is brought up to the same level as it was before. and that in fact they do install a new guard shack for us. There has been discussion that the city of South San Francisco may require us to, unlike before the construction project, we may be required to leave the new roads completely open. Therefore, a guard shack will not be in the same place as it was before, in a median, so that drivers must pass the guard shack. If in fact they do replace the guard shack at all, again, we're in good faith negotiations and discussions with them to watch out for the district and our district tenants' best interests as far as the security is concerned. And the harbor master at Oyster Point Marina is helping me in that endeavor, Jim Merlo. How this will all play out has yet to be determined. If in fact they end up leaving the road open 24/7, then more security is going to be required. More security than what we are currently supplying potentially, which will be a cost to the district. If they determine they're going to put a guard shack off the main road where vehicles entering don't even have to stop or pass by the guard shack, then it may not be a wise decision for the district to pay monies to have that ineffective guard shack manned. It may be better for us to partner with the city potentially, so that we are ensured the same security level that we had before in negotiation, to ensure that maybe we have a relationship with a private security company that provides a security vehicle to patrol. That might be the most effective means, or more effective than, since we no longer are going to have a guard shack like we had before. So there's just a lot of uncertainty at present that we're, again, working in good faith with the city of South San Francisco to resolve.
Okay, thanks. I may have actually, no, you answered my question, John, thank you.
Okay. Would you like to make the motion?
I'll make the motion to authorize the interim general manager to extend security services with Coleman Security Industries on a month-to-month basis not to exceed $9,000 per month.
Second.
Commissioner Mateusz,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Aye.
Commissioner Chamberlain.
Aye?
Motion to adjourn.
Well, wait, I do have something for G. I have something for G, for a future agenda item. Since we are gonna be looking at amending the budget for item 11, I would like to put on the agenda to look at the budget for the CIP so that we can take a look at how we can allocate a more equitable amount for South San Francisco. That's the OPM instead of the $37,800.
If I may, clarification, I did not hear that we were going to amend the budget for item 11.
We just
No.
approved it. That's part of the staff report. Unless I
So-
misread it.
Actually, let's clarify that, because the vote on item 11,
Yeah, so it's
it
basically.
was 2-1.
No, I know that, but it says that we would have to, we do not anticipate the funding, so we will have to amend the 2019-20 budget for this new line item. Isn't that what we voted on?
Yes, and you voted against it.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
didn't
Oh,
pass.
But
Yeah.
this is for my future agenda. I'm not talking about this, I'm talking about if, for a future agenda item, I would like to look at amending the budget for our capital improvement plan to allocate more than $37,800 for Oyster Point. I'm not talking about this item, but since we are looking at amending the budget, because
Maybe you could
Does that
just
make sense?
clarification, just state it again in a line for the agenda. But could you just
Sure,
make it
I
clear?
would like to put on a future agenda ASAP next month, an item to open up or amend the CIP portion of the budget so that we can look at putting more into South San Francisco or Oyster Point instead of the $37,800.
So are you asking to increase the,
I would like to look at all of that, but yes, possibly. I mean, I just wanted on a future agenda item to look at how we can
so,
make it, yeah, I mean, 37,800 is maybe 2% of our
are you
budget.
asking to review the budget?
I'm asking for the CIP plan portion of the budget to allocate more, or to look at the allocation for South San Francisco's Oyster Point Marina in year one. We're gonna be looking at doing the
I'm
same.
having a hard time understanding how to write that. Do you understand?
I think it's pretty easy.
Well, it would pretty much be like a staff report, I think, written by.
Specifically
I
for the CIP.
could write a staff report where we could review the budget and maybe explain the mechanics of it a
I
little bit
understand the
more.
mechanics,
um,
yeah. But only this, well, I guess it'd be hard only to focus on the CIP portion of it since it's the whole budget, but that's the area I would be focused on.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we should take away from the other sections, I don't know, I need to, so don't forget, last month I didn't get my packet.
So wait, we're just trying to understand what exactly you want us to put on the agenda. We're not arguing.
Yeah, no, I know, I'm trying, so I'd like to look at possibly amending the budget to allocate more funds for Oyster Point Marina in the CIP project for specifically the early years, years 1 and 2, for example.
Yeah, and so then I would suggest that we put an item on the budget to review the budget and talk about the mechanics of it, because the CIP budget does not include appropriations until a contract comes to this board for approval for any of the CIP projects.
Right.
So the CIP budget is
Allocated
constantly
$37,000.
being amended on
Yeah.
a continuing basis, since capital improvement projects go across fiscal years.
Yeah, no, I know, but for the first year, we've allocated only $37,800, and that's what I want to look at.
Yeah, that's what the plan is, so we can review that if
Okay,
it's.
so that's very specific, so you want.
Yeah, but I don't want it to be so broad that we get lost in redoing the whole budget, so, yeah, it is very specific.
Mhm. That's good. So you have-
Thank you.
We have a specific, so do you understand now?
Well, I would be putting cliff notes and I think it would.
Sorry,
be
Debbie, I
into,
thought that it was
Julie's
clear.
bailiwick.
So
The
I think-
Staff title, our staff report title.
I think what you're wanting to do is to
I guess,
review that specific
revise.
portion of the budget
Yeah.
that's relates to the, what is it,
37,800, but that's the CIP portion of the budget, not the whole
Yeah,
staff
just that-
numbers, not all
so
of
it's
that.
just specific to the $37,000.
Well, I mean, for the whole CIP thing, the whole CIP, but I would be focusing on that particular,
That's the
number.
part that's hard to understand, given the nature of how our budget works. I think that's why Julie
the
wants to go
the
through the process.
CIP plan, the CIP takes a look at all of our capital projects. I would like to see us look at and discuss the Oyster Point improvements for that part of the CIP. But that means that we would have to look at the CIP as a whole.
Yes,
Amen.
What?
That public comment, amen, I agree with you, is that we have a list of capital projects now in the budget,
Mhm.
but we haven't prioritized those. And
I'm
that's
sorry,
what-
have not or have? I couldn't hear.
We
you.
have not prioritized those and
Who's
talked
the
about
we?
funding sources.
The district,
The district.
Okay,
And what you're proposing is that we do that. And
look
I
at,
think-
look at
I
those
think
things.
that's terrific, and I think that basically, that task would be impossible at a regular board meeting. I think the board should ask for a workshop to
That's a good
prioritize and to look at funding for a capital improvement project. That would be my suggestion as a layperson.
That's a really expansive agenda, future agenda item.
So that.
Which I'm not
that's something
against,
we-
by the way. I just, now it's more expansive than I originally made it, but maybe it needs to be, I don't know.
Well, we're talking, we can't go into that because it's not.
I know.
agenda.
So I'm gonna shut my mouth on that idea, which is not a bad idea.
But you still want to put something on the agenda and it's not clear.
Well,
yet.
maybe it is prioritizing the,
But
that's a bit, I
That's-
know. But I mean, we could actually give direction from that agenda item to
We
do
could-
something next.
would you like to just put prioritizing CIP projects?
Yeah, I think that's,
I mean, we
part-
could
that's
have a
not
dis-
unreasonable.
We can have a discussion about the concept at our board meeting. How's
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Are you
So
okay with
discussion
that?
on prioritizing CIP projects.
I'm getting a thumbs up, I think that's good.
And just to make it clear so that the public, when they see this, they don't think that they're gonna come into our meeting and start this, and that we are going to prioritize all the projects. So the language should say that it's a discussion item about finding a mechanism by which the board in a public setting can discuss in detail prioritizing.
And and from there we can go on if we wanna kick
Well, I
it to
think-
a special meeting or whatever, or workshop, whatever, but
Exactly.
at least it's on the agenda.
Just don't want it to confuse everyone and have everyone think that we're gonna have this
Make a decision.
prioritization meeting, because that's not what we'll be able to do.
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
Some people are opposed to the word prioritize,
Yes.
because obviously to members of the public, all of the projects are
a priority.
a top priority.
Mhm.
So
Ranking.
it may just be that we schedule, in scheduling
Right.
the projects.
Or,
Well, I mean,
I
but the
think it's
point
a-
is that's the
it's not about-
discussion for
you're
the
right.
agenda item, right? That's gonna be the discussion.
yeah,
Does that make sense, Ed?
yeah, you're right, thanks for that. I think prioritizing is probably not the right word to use. So discussion would be better.
I'll probably, for the minutes, I'll try and just encapsulate that, like I said, in a little clip note. But
Okay.
then, I'm not sure if that's gonna be Julie or John writing the staff report in response to your
Okay.
request.
And we can work with you on getting the agenda item language.
Thank you. So I'll make a motion to,
No, we need
we have
do an
the activity report, yeah.
That's your item, John.
Sorry, Ed.
First, we have to establish, does everybody want it read, or do you want us to assume that because we have a board packet, we've already read our board packet?
Well, I'd like to hear anything you'd like to highlight.
I was just, Totem Point Harbor, we're still hovering around 100%, 99% occupied. Staff, led by Training Officer Kerry Smith, continues to do a great job in increasing our training levels. And as you all heard earlier, we've successfully been able to hire 3 more deputy harbor masters to continue our rescue efforts and public service, and increasing our customer service skills, etc. As I put in this staff report, I want to recognize Deputy Harbor Masters Jacob and Tyler, Jacob Walding and Tyler Rich, who continue safety educational classes and jumped at the opportunity to give some training and familiarization tour to over 90 high school students from Michigan that happened to show up.
It just happened to show up?
Yeah, it was not
Wow.
scheduled even, but they did an excellent job, and I got a letter of thank you from their instructors. At Oyster Point Marina, as I discussed earlier, the development project continues with the challenging construction there, with over 1,500 concrete pilings being driven, concrete and steel pilings being driven. The contractor continues to do monthly meetings, to host these monthly meetings, at which time our tenants, slip renters have the opportunity to voice their concerns, and I've been impressed with the contractors' responsiveness, and I could tell that they've built up confidence in our boaters, and some of our most challenging tenants. But there's still a long way to go. Unfortunately, they've planned for 2 months now in a row and told us of dates when they were going to get us off the generators, which we've been on for almost a year. And unfortunately, they have postponed the transfer again, and now we don't even know when to tell our tenants at present. But despite all that, our occupancy still hovers right at 80%, 79% last month. Deputy Harbor Masters there again are doing a great job, and as I alluded to earlier, when issues are brought to our Harbor Master there's attention, we are addressing them as quickly as is possible. The $37,000 that was mentioned earlier in the capital improvement project budget or program is to replace engines on our emergency vessel there that's stationed at Oyster Point Marina. However, the Board of Harbor Commissioners has no limit on the monies we spend at any of our facilities for necessary safety repairs and to keep the facilities in tip-top shape, and staff are aware of that.
Okay. Thank you. Now, Tom.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.